This video is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the best and easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's Underdog Fantasy, the best way to fantasy.
PT Parking says Texas still only has one D tackle in the 2025 class. Right, you are correct. It is Josiah Sharma, 3-star out of Folsom, California. They flipped from Oregon at the end of July. Who are the most likely flip targets?
Charles, Myon.
Yes. Myon Charles, a top 247 D lineman out of Port Charlotte in Florida, committed to Florida State. Has been committed since I think about end of June. Yeah, end of June was when it was. And I think I talked about it a little when it first happened, but I just want to revisit the original commitment. What happened – this is what happened. So the Josiah Sharma stuff, I explained that. How we had quotes, it was a done deal to Texas, and then 2 hours before, all of a sudden, it's Oregon. And we're like, oh, how did this happen? Texas obviously gets him back. But that same day that Josiah Sharma stuff happened, we were talking to sources at Texas, and they were feeling very, very good on Myon Charles and very, very confident that something could happen very soon. That being said, Hank threw in a crystal ball for him, right? Mm-hmm. Later that night, he commits, but to Florida State, not Texas. So, from my point of view, I'll leave you all up for y'all's own opinion on what you think happened. But what I think happened is something very similar to what happened with Josiah Sharma, right? So that being said, now that Florida State has entered the season 0-2, their defensive line has been pushed around in consecutive weeks, and they're entering week 2 of the season with an 0-2 record due to starting in week 0, and with both those losses being in conference play. Mm-hmm. They're 0-2 in the conference that they say is so shitty they have to sue them to leave. They're 0-2 in that conference. Yes.
Damn, man. Just knifing and twisted, dog.
I don't care, man. I'm tired of their fans. I can't stand them. I'm so happy they've been 0-2. But
oh, that's great.
The recruiting has suffered at Florida State. Their fans are pissed about it. That's why the team looks like the way it looks. They've gone into the portal, and I've gotten at least a dozen players out of the portal every year going back to 2020. That's why Mario Cristobal at Florida. That's why Mario Cristobal at Miami, Billy Napier at Florida. That's why those two coaches have been negative recruiting the shit out of Florida State the last 2 years, saying all they take is transfers because they can't develop anyone worth a fuck. And it's because they can't. They can't develop their players. Go back and look at their best players last year. All of them except Jordan Travis, who was a 4th, 5th, or maybe even 6-year player. All of them were transfers. Keon Coleman was by way of Michigan State before Opelousas, Louisiana. Jared Verse came from the University of Albany. I forget where Fisk came from, but I think it was Central Michigan. It was an FCS program.
Yeah.
Yes, they did. They did a great job for a few select years of identifying talent in the portal, because that is not something that's easy to do. It is not. And they did a great job at it. But this year, they swung for the fences and they struck out. Their guy at QB is DJ Uiagalelei, whatever it is, who is so bad they're not replacing him because Brock Glenn is even worse. Roydell Williams, I think, could be decent, but their O-line can't get anyone off the ball. And at receiver, Benson looks like a dude. That looks like the best guy they hit on in the portal. Outside of that, it's not looking great. It's looking like they're overpaying a ton, and that's where all their fans keep posting memes of their players wearing jewelry saying we need to stop paying them NIL money. Anyways, Florida State needs to keep losing for Texas to have a better chance at Kevin Wynn, who is our number 52 overall prospect in the country for the 25 class. He's a defensive lineman out of Georgia. Originally, back in the summer, chose Florida State. Georgia finished 2nd. Texas finished 3rd. Had only ever visited Texas once for that OV. So if a flip happens there, I do think he's going to need to visit Texas again, preferably for a game day visit. And I think preferably for that Texas-Georgia game, because I personally believe if he's going to flip to Georgia. And if you can get him on campus where he sees both those schools and Texas beats Georgia, that's going to help Texas's chances. So I wouldn't be surprised if Texas is really aiming for Wynn to come in for the Georgia game. Yes, Florida State is 0-2 right now. Yes, Steve Sarkisian is phenomenal when it comes to smelling blood in the water and going and getting recruits from certain programs. Look at Wardell Mack and Xavier Filsaime. Everyone remembers Filsaime was a Florida commit that they flipped. Few people remember Wardell Mack was a Florida commit at one point. They smelled blood in the water and they went out and got it. That's what's happening here with Florida State. But what is it? It's week 2. They play the long game. They're setting things up. Logistically, they know what they're doing, and they're smart about it. The Georgia game, I would not be surprised if Kevin Wynn is there. Myon Charles, on the other hand, was supposed to be on campus at the end of July. Texas was going to sneak him and Josiah Sharma on. They had told us we were not going to leak it until they were both on campus. Once we got to that morning, we were told Sharma's on the way. He's in transit from Cali. Charles isn't making it anymore. And we don't know what happened with Charles. Our assumption is Florida State found out about it, got him not to go. But I do think before the season over, Charles is going to come in on a visit. Is that visit required to flip him? I do not think so. A visit from Kevin Wynn, I think, is required for Texas to flip him. A visit from Myon Charles, I do not think it's required. He was at either the spring game or another spring unofficial visit at Texas before he came in for the OV. So he's already been to Texas at least 2 times. And again, he was very, very close to committing to Texas after the end of June. Like Texas fully thought they were getting him, and then all of a sudden it was Florida State. So that being said, I don't want to necessarily say expect Myon Charles in the class by the end of the cycle. But with the amount of optimism in Austin there is around him, I don't think that's a horrible thing to do. So I'll leave it at that. I'm not sure if or when a flip happens there. But if I had a gun to my head and I had to ask where Myon Charles was going to end up come signing day, I would probably pick Texas. Outside of him, other D-line flip targets, Joseph Mbachu, who's at the same school in Georgia as Nick Brooks. He's a really intriguing prospect, had never played football until this year, and Florida offered him over the summer and gave him a scholarship that he committed to. That was his only offer. Now, in the last month, he's picked up about a dozen more and now holds Georgia, Texas, USC, like you name it. He's got everything. And he actually kind of sucks at football, but he's 6'6", 285 and comes from a deep basketball background and can move and has plus length. He has a great arm length, great wingspan. That's a guy you want. And with schools, their scholarship count going to 105 soon, and defensive line being interior defensive line, I should say, being a bigger position of priority than it's ever been, schools like Georgia are doing what they can just to make sure they get this guy, and their rival Florida doesn't. Because if he hits, he can be an All-American. That's the type of athleticism and ceiling he has, but it's about actually coaching him, developing, because, again, he has 2 football games to his whole life. That's it. He's played in 2 games. So a lot to work with there, but it's going to need some work. Other names to know, Braxton Kyle, he's a Rutgers commit. I'm not a huge fan of the game there. I'd rather them look at flips, and I think Texas feels the same way. That's why he didn't get offered till August. Same with Mbachu. The third kid that they offered out of Georgia in the month of August was Caleb Bell, a 3-star Arkansas D-line commit. I saw he plays for Milton, who played Diabell when Diabell's on ESPN a couple weeks back. I watched Caleb Bell a lot that game. I was not very impressed, and I was not very impressed after I saw him at Under Armour Atlanta either. So I would look at either of those 3 takes, similar to how I looked at kind of Melvin Hills last year, where it's not the potential true difference makers. And Mbachu has the greatest chance of those 3 August Georgia offers and the Texas sent out. And Mbachu has the greatest chance of turning into a legit difference maker, but I mean, it's not a great chance. He needs a lot of work. Other names, they're still talking to DJ Sanders. I don't think a flip happens there, though, but they are still talking to him. He's really good at football, so I got to say that.
Yeah.
Brandon Brown, there is some talk there. I don't think a flip happens. I'll leave it at that. Zion Williams out of Lufkin, the LSU commit. There's still communication there. I do not think a flip happens either. He obviously canceled his Texas OV. That was kind of a weird deal. But his girlfriend at Lufkin is going to LSU, and she decided she was going to LSU before he committed. I think that was part of it. Unless something's going to happen there, I think LSU feels pretty good about keeping him. I wouldn't disagree with them. Trying to think of other names. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then Malcolm Simpson out of Hitchcock. That's still a guy they're talking to. They haven't extended an offer to him yet. I think they're looking for, that midseason senior film, and they're going to evaluate that, see how that is. Considering he only played in about 4 or 5 games last year because he was academically ineligible and had some other stuff going on when he was at Galveston Ball.